Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon has been found dead in the northern part of the South Korean capital after he was reported missing on Thursday afternoon. Police said Park's body was found around midnight near the place where his phone signal had been last detected. Police also said there is no sign of foul play, but a detailed investigation is needed. South Korean Yonhap news agency reported on Wednesday that a former secretary of Park had filed a complaint over alleged sexual activity, but there has been no confirmation that the allegations are linked to his death. Park has been a mayor of Seoul since 2011. He was considered a potential frontrunner for 2020 presidential election in South Korea. Hong Kong is closing schools again after a surge in locally transmitted coronavirus cases. Schools were shut down from Monday, but those scheduled to take exam could still do so while practicing social distancing. The city's public high schools gradually reopened from May after the spread of the virus was contained. But new clusters have emerged in the past 2 days. Hong Kong recorded 34 locally transmitted infections on Thursday, the highest daily tally in more than 3 months. Authorities have also reintroduced limits on the number of people in public venues, like restaurants, bars, and fitness centers. Singapore headed to the polls for a general election on Friday as it continues to battle the coronavirus outbreak. Nearly 200 candidates are contesting. It's the second time in city-state history that all 93 seats in parliament are up for grabs. Opinion polls predict a comfortable win for Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's camp. The ruling People's Action Party has been in power for over 60 years. Earlier, James Gomez, regional director of the Asia Center in Singapore, stated his opinion on the significance of this vote and the impact of the pandemic on it.
For me, the most important takeaway from this election is not so much the mandate needed for the ruling party. It's whether the people's desire, the people's mandate to have credible, qualified, and effective opposition, elected to parliament, is at all possible under the current electoral system. One thing that was clear this time was the articulation of this desire across Singapore, across different constituency and wards. You find there is a message from the voters that they are ready to elect qualified opposition MPs into parliament, but it really depends whether this election can deliver that. The COVID-19's impact on Singapore's elections at several levels. The first level is at the voter level. There will be a small number of people who will not be able to vote in these elections, either because their ability and infrastructure to vote from overseas has not been possible due to the COVID-19 or technical issues, and then also those who are medically unfit for stationed in Singapore. But I think the bulk of the impact is really on the campaign. Given that there is social distancing, there has been limited contact possible with voters on the physical sense because there are measures of no more groups than 5. But also even with the online campaign options, it's unclear how much voters have actually consumed information online. Although most political parties have endeavored to put their information out, a lot of it is also being played out in the mainstream media. There also has been only limited engagement during the campaign, and a lot of it around attacks on opponents as opposed to real discussion on policy issues. So this is another impact.
Hundreds of drones light up the night sky in Seoul for a spectacular showcase of motivational and public health awareness messages as the world battles the coronavirus pandemic. 300 unmanned aerial vehicles were programmed to form images above the Han River, which runs through the capital of South Korea. Let's take a look. The sister of DPRK leader Kim Jong-un says another summit with the United States is unlikely this year. In a statement released by the Korean Central News Agency, Kim Yo-jong said talks would not benefit Pyongyang unless there was a dramatic change in Washington's stance. She said denuclearization of the peninsula could only be achieved if the U.S. made major irreversible steps parallel with the DPRK's actions. On Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo expressed hope for more talks with the DPRK. Pyongyang blamed Pompeo and the National Security Advisor John Bolton for the collapse of the last Trump-Kim summit. China has drawn up a proposal for helping resolve the crisis in Libya and restore peace in the African country. Foreign Minister Wang Yi presented the proposal during a high-level virtual meeting on Libya, hosted by the UN Security Council. Wang called for a ceasefire and an immediate stop to hostile actions, urging all parties to implement the UN Security Council resolutions. He called on the international community to focus on political situations, saying all parties should return to dialogue and smoothly advance political, economic, and military negotiations. Wang also called for efforts to stop terrorist operations in Libya. Let's take a listen.
The international community should oppose terrorism in all forms. It should particularly prevent the movement of foreign terrorists across borders and crack down on terrorist organizations and individuals listed by the UN Security Council.
The World Health Organization said it will set up an independent panel to review its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the response by governments worldwide. WHO Director General said it's time for an honest assessment of lessons learned.
Member States also agreed that WHO should initiate an independent and comprehensive evaluation of the lessons learned from the international health response to COVID-19. This is a time for self-reflection, to look at the world we live in and to find ways to strengthen our collaboration as we work together to save lives and bring this pandemic under control.
Former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark and former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf have agreed to head the panel and choose its members. The panel's report is expected to be released during the annual meeting of health ministers in November.
Stay with us as we bring you more news on Asia Outlook. The Seoul High Court has reduced the prison sentence for former South Korean President Park Geun-hye. The 68-year-old now has to complete a jail term of 15 years for bribery and another 5 years for abuse of power and other criminal charges. She's also fined $15 million. Prior to Friday's hearing, Park Geun-hye was serving a combined 30-year prison term at the Seoul Detention Center. She was ousted in March 2017 amid a scandal involving abuse of power and corruption. The Chinese and Indian border defense forces have taken effective measures to disengage from frontline contact in the Galwan Valley on the Sino-Indian border. Based on the consensus reached at the recent commander-level military talks, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian told reporters on Thursday at a regular press conference. Let's take a look.
目前中印两国边防部队根据军长级会谈达成的共识，在中印边界西段、加勒万河谷等地区已经采取有效措施，脱离一线接触。中印边境局势总体稳定，趋向缓和。中印双方将继续通过军事和外交渠道保持对话沟通，包括举行新一轮军长级会谈和中印边境事务磋商和协调工作机制会议。希望印方同中方相向而行，以实际行动落实好双方达成的各项共识，共同推动边境地区局势进一步缓和降温。
A new temporary COVID-19 hospital for 10,000 patients opened in New Delhi, capital of India, as the country grapples with rapidly rising cases. Floods and mudslides have killed at least 60 people in southwestern Japan's Kumamoto prefecture. Torrential rain continued to battle the region of Kyushu on Monday after flooding over the weekend. Large areas along the Kuma River were swallowed by floodwaters, with many houses, buildings, and vehicles submerged. Residents in Kumamoto to evacuate following heavy rain and wind over last weekend, but many people chose to stay over concerns of catching the coronavirus, even though officials said the shelters are equipped with safety measures. China's authorities said on Friday shrimps imported from South America have tested positive for the coronavirus. Customs officials in Dalian and Xiamen found the virus in frozen shrimps from 3 Ecuadorian companies on Friday of last week. China has suspended imports of products from the 3 firms and will return or destroy goods that have been seized. Authorities are testing imported refrigerated food products and have halted meat imports from 23 companies in high-risk countries and regions. In another episode of Answer Bank, we will find out how ECMO is saving the lives of COVID-19 patients.
You may have heard of the word ECMO a lot in recent news reports and wonder what it is. In the COVID-19 pandemic, ECMO is used globally as a last resort to save patients. So, how does ECMO save COVID-19 patients? ECMO is short for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It is a machine used to replace the heart and lung function in open heart surgery. In simple words, it allows the heart and lungs to rest by pumping and oxygenating a patient's blood outside the body. We know that the novel coronavirus mainly attacks the lungs. Therefore, although not designed for COVID-19, ECMO has been used as an adjunct support for COVID-19 patients in critical condition since the beginning of the outbreak. For COVID-19 patients, their lung function is significantly impaired by the virus, which could cause serious respiratory insufficiency and low level of oxygen in their blood. These are indications of ECMO. Once connected, The machine can temporarily replace the patient's cardiopulmonary function for gas exchange and blood circulation to keep other organs working, which buys doctors precious time to save the patient. You may think that once connected to ECMO, COVID-19 patients will be saved, no matter how sick they are. Unfortunately, that's not true. As a way of life support, ECMO cannot guarantee that the patient will be brought back to life and has its limitations. Firstly, ECMO is not suitable for every patient. One premise is that patients can use ECMO only if their lung function can be restored after the removal of it, and the function of other organs is relatively good. For seniors with underlying diseases, the risk of death is higher with ECMO. Secondly, patients treated with ECMO will experience some impairment of lung function. Although the remaining lung function can support daily life, full recovery is impossible. Also, complications could happen during ECMO treatment. Therefore, we need to be clear that ECMO is just a temporary replacement of cardiopulmonary function. It can indeed save lives, but the key to patient survival lies on whether the primary disease can be effectively treated. In this case, COVID-19. So even if there is a last resort in saving coronavirus patients, the best way we can protect ourselves is taking protection measures to avoid infection in the first place.
Social media users love to show off a new outfit in every photo, but that can be expensive as well as bad for the environment. Designers in Russia are now offering to create digital clothing, which only ever exists in online photos at a fraction of the cost of real clothes.
В статистике, кажется, в мире каждая 10-я вещь покупается для того, чтобы сделать контент в соцсетях. Есть, например, блогеры, которые постоянно вынуждены делать контент, и они заказывают вещи, они покупают вещи только ради фотографии, или они их берут в аренду. Почему бы, если вещь нужна только для фотографии, не примерить цифровую вещь? Мне кажется, это очень классная возможность сделать моду экологичнее.
Физические продукты модной индустрии, они, те, которые вызывают у меня интерес, они часто мне не по карману. И плюс я не вижу смысла в приобретении вещей, которые, это очень модно и интересно сейчас, а через пару лет это уже не интересно.
International students across the United States respond to immigration guidelines released early this week. A new set of federal guidelines for foreign students issued by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement on Monday will force college students that hold F-1 visas in the United States to leave the country if their colleges opt for remote learning in the fall.
Yesterday, the first thing that happened as soon as this was announced, I was just crying, and I heard the same reaction from a lot of people. "100% impossible, but there are no direct flights between the United States and Venezuela. Going back right now would mean that I would be under constant power outages. There's no reliable internet connection in Venezuela.
I'm built to life here. I've been here for 11 years. I've been here since I was 14. And so I've almost been here as long as I was back home. So, just the idea of it is it's kind of a blow. It's a blow.
There are more news coming on Asia Outlook, so make sure you stick around. The World Health Organization on Friday said that the unknown pneumonia reported in Kazakhstan could be COVID-19. Dr. Michael Ryan, Executive Director of the Health Emergencies Program of the WHO, said at a regular briefing that the outbreak in Kazakhstan, reported to be highly lethal, was clearly not on their radar.
This is certainly on our radar, and we've been tracking COVID-19 across all of Europe, and particularly in the Central Asian republics, including Kazakhstan. There are a number of explanations that can explain the reported rise in the number of pneumonias in Kazakhstan, and we're working with the authorities there to investigate. More than 10,000 laboratory-confirmed cases of COVID-19 have been reported by national authorities over the last 7 days. So there's been a big surge in actual COVID cases itself. We're looking at the actual testing and the quality of the testing to make sure that there haven't been false negative tests for some of those other pneumonias that have provisionally tested negative, and that is likely to be a major cause of this. That in many ways, many of these pneumonia cases will also be COVID-19. They just have not been diagnosed correctly. But again, that remains to be seen.
China's national college entrance exam, known as Gaokao in Chinese, came to a close nationwide on Friday. The test is such an important examination that almost nothing can disrupt it. But this year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and so many uncertainties, some adjustment even had to be made to the test. Let's hear more from Beijing.
It's finally over. Gaokao is always tense for high school seniors, but this year's exam has been like no other. Gaokao was postponed for a month due to the pandemic. Once the exam began, students faced other obstacles. In central China, they braved record-making floods to get to testing centers. Many were ferried across an inundated city to sit for the exam. And in the capital Beijing, test takers observed strict health protocols after a virus outbreak in June disrupted daily life. Students wore masks at all times, temperatures were taken multiple times a day, and medics were always on site.
I finally feel relaxed. I feel liberated. It's been a hectic first half of the year.
I can finally relax. I thought I'd want to celebrate, but now I just want to sleep for a long time. I studied history, and it occurred to me that we are part of it. I wonder how people will look back on this years later.
It's certain that the students would have their test results in 2 weeks and the universities will start admission shortly, but it's still uncertain whether the students will all begin their next step of schooling on campus.
I brought the flowers for my daughter because I wanted her to know whatever happens next in her life, I hope she will always have sunshine and a bright outlook.
Despite uncertainties, for now, the students will just enjoy the summer. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MI Radio. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Until next time.